I'm Jeremy Singer, president of the College Board, and this is the Education Equation. I've spent my career grappling with what truly drives student success. On this podcast, I'll talk with people who are researching, building, and scaling solutions that matter. Every episode will go beyond the hype and focus on data and evidence to see what's actually working. Let's stop guessing and let's figure out what works. My guest today is Sari Factor, Vice Chairman and Chief Strategy Officer at Imagine Learning. Sari started a career as a math teacher and has spent more than 40 years as an educational leader, including at Kaplan, McGraw-Hill, and Houghton Mifflin. We talk about why schools as people systems are so hard to change, how rethinking K-12 curricula can improve student outcomes, and the promise of AI in classrooms. It's a candid conversation about what it really takes to make change stick. Let's dive in. I am thrilled to introduce today's guest, Sari Factor. There are few people in education with greater depth and breadth of experience than Sari. She's a former colleague, a current friend, as well as a longtime Wheaton Terrier lover. Sari, thank you for the time.
Glad to be with you, Jeremy.
We've often commiserated over the years of how hard it is to change some of the systemic issues that limit student success. I think we've been having this conversation for 20 years now. NAEP, the National Assessment of Education Progress, informally considered the nation's report card, came out earlier this year. The results were quite sobering. Reading scores were down both for 4th and 8th graders, and while there was a slight improvement for 4th grade math, this was driven by large gains in the highest performing students. In both math and reading, the gap in performance widened. You posted on Forbes in March about these results and what as a nation we need to do to improve educational outcomes. In your piece, you wrote, we need to, quote, rethink K-12 curricula, as well as consider other broad changes to truly imagine student outcomes. What needs to change around curriculum, and how is Imagine Learning thinking about this?
You started with how we've commiserated on how hard it is to make change in schools. And I think it's probably worth having a conversation first about that, because schools are inherently difficult places to change because it's people. These are systems of people. We're messy. We're all different. We have varied backgrounds and motivations and emotions and different rates of growth. I think about even our own organization, any organization I've been a part of. Look how hard it is to change organizations, and we're paying people to do that.
Very true.
So it really requires strong vision and leadership and a plan with accountability and a way to measure progress. It's hard in schools because of the short tenure of school leaders, school superintendents, and huge rates of teacher turnover, especially in the last decade. But I think there is recognition, and some of the bright spots in the NAEP show when districts or states take a leadership role and say, this is what we're going to do, folks. Let's all get on board and do it. And there have been a lot of policy discussions about it. Science of reading is a great example of that. Things can change. So the glimmers of hope, like the Mississippi Miracle in reading and some of the Louisiana, progress, Tennessee progress with their focus on high quality instructional materials. We can point to positive changes in the school district of Philadelphia, Los Angeles Unified, both of them customers of ours who implemented our high quality instructional materials and are seeing the results in NAEP. It takes time. Change does not happen overnight. It often takes 3 to 5 years to see the results of those efforts. And we're impatient about wanting to see results faster.
No question. These are very hard things to move. Your point about these are people systems and we need to be patient with change, all very fair. And it takes a certain level of leadership and continuity that often is not there. But I'm glad you called out some of those successes. But can we talk a little bit about knowledge-based literacy programs and problem-based math curriculums? Can you help our listeners understand what those are?
Sure. So both knowledge building literacy and problem-based mathematics stem from the evidence that people learn by making connections to what we already know. So, we live in a context, we're making connections all the time. That is how our brains work. And both pedagogies emphasize students actively constructing understanding through collaborative inquiry and authentic real-world problem solving, rather than, being a passive receptor of information.
Yep.
So students become active inquirers, engage in ongoing reflection and assessment as part of the learning process. It's really critical to the success of these kinds of new, maybe the not so new pedagogies.
And you talk, there's a broad classification of these programs, and then there's what you all provide. And you mentioned a couple, LAUSD and a few others that are using your curriculum. So can you talk more about like how that's worked and what is the sort of evidence of success, even if it's initial?
Sure. So we have curricula in lots of subject areas. Imagine IM, which uses illustrative mathematics as its core, is our K-12 math offering. We have a K-8 Twig science program uses the same kind of idea, and Traverse social studies program follows a similar philosophy for social studies. And we're working on a new ELA program, brand new K-5, which I'll be able to talk about later in the fall. So I'll give Philadelphia as an example.
Great.
New superintendent came in, Dr. Tony Watlington. He decided we really have a problem in Philadelphia. Our kids can't read, they're really struggling. And he decided we need new curriculum across the board. And so he did an RFP for everything. Now, that is a bold and ambitious idea, but he had the support of the community and the families. And he kind of laid down the gauntlet. He adopted illustrative mathematics, our illustrative mathematics program, K-12. They had been doing some work prior to the adoption to get teachers ready, which is advice I would give to any district, is think about that year zero implementation. How are you thinking about, preparing teachers, preparing your community for the change? Really smart way to implement. They implemented K-12 math 2 years ago. And then last fall, the beginning of the 2024-25 school year, implemented our EL education product. And, we have been working side by side with them from the beginning. Every teacher got days and days of training and preparation on the product. And, we follow kind of Heather Hill's approach, meta-analysis that she's done about really grounding the professional learning in the curriculum so that the teachers can try it, see it, reflect on it, and come back and ask questions. And that has been effective.
And is it too early to see gains, student achievement gains, or what's
No,
the story?
they are beginning. They have shown gains on the Pennsylvania tests, but also they feel like their NAEP scores are like a vindication of the direction that they're moving, but it's very early days.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And you mentioned sort of the work that you all do in the implementation, but another topic that we've been sort of going back and forth again, or commiserating over for probably 20 years, has been the challenge of getting pedagogically designed, rigorous programs implemented successfully in schools. Too often what is manifested in the school is not true to the program design and the research behind it. So, you hold out at Philadelphia as a success so far. Can you help us understand, like, when that doesn't happen, what are the barriers? What are the things that prevent the high fidelity implementation?
Yeah, so part of it is helping educators understand the why behind the what. Like, why is the curriculum designed this way? What will enable you to be successful in the classroom delivering the curriculum? I mean, the curricula are basically packaged activities that are grounded in the learning science. Many of our educators don't have the same background. They don't all bring the same background to the classroom. So anytime you're trying to learn a new system or process like that, it can be overwhelming. I think about when I bought my first electric car. I had to rewire my brain to use it properly. So it can be especially difficult for seasoned educators because we're asking them to change their practice, and they might be, resistant to that change. They don't understand the change. I mean, one district leader who was implementing our literacy program and having to put in the new science of reading practices told me she had to help her teachers go through a grieving process. Like,
Right.
I was doing it wrong
Right.
all these years.
So it's a real change management. It's sort of trying to get the teachers and the leaders to understand the why behind the program. And as you point out, at times that could be different from how they've been always going about their business. So that's hard. I assume it's a matter of devoting enough time, and what about, I've heard programs that I don't think your program is necessarily like this, but where there's a degree of concern around academic freedom, like the teachers don't want to have too much prescription.
Yeah, that certainly is the case at times. Again, this goes back to leadership and having strong vision and alignment all up and down a system. So, from a superintendent or associate superintendent for curriculum to building leadership, because the building leadership, if there's like an instructional coaching staff, are the ones that really help support the educators in the practice. But there has been resistance, and you will find that all over. I mean, I think the decade that preceded this one was a period of particular kind of DIY curriculum development, as every teacher then had access to the internet and Pinterest and Teachers Pay Teachers. And that really drove, I think, some of the problems we're seeing now in student achievement and proficiency because there was incoherence of the curriculum. You might meet all the standards, you might not. This classroom might not. And as students progress from grade 3 to 4 to 5, they get a different experience as opposed to something that is coherent, especially in a subject like mathematics. It builds on, one topic builds on the next.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if you were saying or imagine learning has had less success, is it safe to say the main reason is there isn't the level of buy-in and understanding across the board? Is that the biggest cause
But
of?
yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. And then let me ask you, because, many people, including myself, see at times that a lot of things in education act like a pendulum, right? And we go to one extreme and then it goes the other. And so, we could argue that with all the tools, the DIY tools that were available to teachers, there's a real growth with the internet. And so that may have led a lot more teachers to all design their own programs, and great teachers are able to do that. But, teachers have so much on their plate. It's almost an impossible job. So is your sort of thesis that hopefully the pendulum is coming back to acknowledge like, hey, teachers can't do everything, and they're acknowledging, hey, there are these very in-depth research developed programs, and you're seeing more of that in the market or more
Yeah,
acceptance of that?
I think that is definitely happening in the market today. And I think that district leaders also have to consider each teacher as an individual. We talk about personalizing learning
Right. Right.
students. I think we have to do the same for teachers because, you should know when this teacher, who's a very experienced teacher, who's been on track and, we've watched her classroom and she can handle making changes to the curriculum. Others, newer teachers, emergency certified teachers. We have a lot of teachers that are emergency credentialed and so on because of the huge shortage we've had over the last decade. They may not have the experience. Uh,
Right.
I was talking with a bunch of educators earlier this week about mathematics. And, the truth is in elementary school, many of the teachers don't understand the math content well enough. They've had maybe one math methods course, if any,
Right.
went through emergency certification. They're like very underprepared to deliver the kind of instruction we're needing our kids to have.
I had never thought of that parallel. I really like it, but the idea that just like individual student learners, there's a level of individualization you need to do to sort of meet them where they are. And in the same way, the thesis is, with teachers, it's also equally important to understand that there's different levels of experience. A little bit of duh that I'm that I'm
Yeah.
not realizing. But I guess the question is, it's hard. We know it's very hard for teachers to do that level. Like they already are managing a large classroom, and to try to individualize instruction sounds good, very hard to pull off. What are good instructional leaders at the district level, the school level? Like, how do they pull the levers for the students? So how does that work with your program? Like, what levels of flexibility to give to the experienced teacher who they clearly see is making progress? And what are the extra supports and frameworks that they provide to the new teacher or the, emergency certified teacher?
Yeah, one of the things I think about is kind of the first year of an implementation of a new curriculum versus subsequent years, right? The first year, often what I see the district leaders saying is, look, do your best to follow the curriculum to the letter.
Yep.
And then you will, as you learn the curriculum, you will get more comfortable with it and you will know where you can modify or what, modifications make the most sense for this group of students or that group of students. And, we're doing the same thing to our curriculum all the time. I mean, our
Right.
heritage as a digital company, digital first curriculum provider, means we're always looking at improving the curriculum year in, year out, as opposed to, when I was in the textbook world where you would publish something and it would be the same thing for the next 10 years until the district decided to buy something new. This is we think about it as a living curriculum. So it's changing and evolving based upon where we see teachers have difficulty and where we think things could be much more straightforward, right? Which then makes it easier for the teachers to use it. But they customize. I mean, the best building leaders and instructional coaches are talking with the teachers about their own buy-in, right? What practice would you like to really focus on this week? Is there an instructional practice? And getting their buy-in to try it, try something new, try this instructional approach, and then let's talk about it. Professional learning communities have come a long way as a technique for getting teachers, all the third grade teachers who are teaching the same lessons in math, to unpack the lessons together and share expertise, right? So you might have more experienced teachers guiding the newer teachers, the more novice teachers in the building, which has been very effective.
So I'm going to do an optimistic scenario and then a more pessimistic scenario. So the optimistic scenario is one you've laid out, which is, and you didn't quite say it this way, but I think your argument would be the rigor of which curricular programs, the development of the programs has improved over time. Like we're getting better and better. Organizations are developing better research programs, curriculum programs that are based on actual, situations and can mold to different environments and all this stuff. So, 30 years ago, the curriculum programs may have been, less sophisticated, less advanced, less tailored. So that's the good news. And then we had a wave where people were moving away from those programs because of the DYI and other things. But now there may be more acceptance of the value of that within the profession. And so we have better programs and there's a greater acceptance. So that's like, hey, we're in a good place. The pessimistic scenario is, we've been doing this for a long time. You've been doing this for a long time. And we've seen little gains. Like a lot of the scores have been stagnant or falling, and the gaps have grown in many cases. And there are people now, we'll get to AI in a minute, but even independent of AI, there are people who say, hey, we could do all great curriculum and so forth. That's not enough. Like more fundamentally, the whole K-12 system has to be rethought, how students learn, the role of teachers. What's your reaction to that?
Well, actually, I think it's a both and. We do need to change the structure of schools and rethink what is the purpose of schooling. I think some of the things we're teaching today are going to become irrelevant as AI displaces parts of the workforce. The way we are thinking about what we're teaching has to be shrunk in some ways and broadened in other ways, right?
Right.
Thinking about the skills that students really need to be able to demonstrate, resilience, communication skills, in ways that we haven't even begun to think about because we're communicating now, not only with humans, but with machines too. How do we write a great prompt? How do we teach kids to write a great prompt is a new skill that they haven't really had to think about, but it is critical thinking.
Right.
And so I don't think we've made those skills visible in products and in programs, and we haven't really helped tune the kids to thinking about developing their skills, their how I learn best skills.
Right.
Some teachers are very good at that, but it's not practice generally. We
So-
think of content knowledge.
So you sort of identified two things, if I listened well. One is just what's being taught. And we've seen some change, like computer science being taught in a lot of schools. I think statistics are much more frequent in schools than it was 30 years ago. So there's some change. I think the average school, my view is depressingly, it hasn't changed fast enough what's being taught and why over time, not just now. So I want to believe there's a will to more radical change, but I think there's just such inertia, but we could debate that. And the second thing you said, and I don't disagree, I just worry about the pace. The second piece is, what is the term durable skills, right? It's skills that aren't subject specific, but your ability to communicate, as you mentioned, your ability to problem solve, et cetera, and more helping students understand the importance of those skills. Can you teach those skills? Can you assess those skills and so forth? So those feel like two separate things. What you didn't hit on, which was interesting to me, was how the teaching is happening.
Mhm.
Like, do we need more of a revolution in, what the day looks like, what the teacher's role is? I mean, this is a hard question for you in your role, but I'd love to hear how you think about that.
Yeah, well, I actually think the programs that we have are a bridge to that because they do require much more student-centered approaches, student inquiry into real-world problems in science and mathematics and so on. Once you possess the foundational skills, the academic knowledge, you can really start driving that. I think where we're going to see that kind of change, and we are seeing that kind of change the fastest, is in high schools. High schools feel extremely irrelevant to me,
Yep.
especially as we, frame this as, pre-K to forever learning, right? People often say pre-K through 16, pre-K through 20, whatever it is, but it's really for a lifetime. And how do we equip students with the skills to bob and weave throughout their careers as we know they will have to? I worry right now that workforce readiness, that topic, is so constrained to CTE, and we're thinking about it through the today's
Yep.
lens of I need more welders, or I need, people who are doing new skills like, robotics and cybersecurity. Yeah, we need those professions absolutely. But we also need kids to be able to move from one to another because we live in such a dynamic world. So, there are new schools coming to be. I believe this school choice movement can unleash some of that innovation, but it's very difficult to,
Yeah.
to get new schools up and running with a different approach. You need a dynamic leader, and that doesn't scale well or
Right.
easily.
Right. 100% at College Board, we feel the same way that there's a lack of relevance with learners today. And that's, if you're not interested or curious or engaged, the game's over. Right. So, like, we have to figure that. And I like what you're saying. I mean, what your curriculum does is try to attach the learning to things that will be like, hopefully, of more interest and more relevance. So I think that's part of the puzzle. And I like your view of, we need more models. So I get the way that your curriculum works. Is the teacher role different? Are you asking teachers to engage with the students differently other than the topic areas? But like what else is different from how a teacher would teach your curriculum versus
I mean,
another?
one of the things that is different is that the teachers are really expected to be more facilitators and modelers than delivering. It's not the stand and deliver
Yeah.
instruction. It's facilitating classroom experiences where a lot of the learning happens between the kids, among the kids, and the kids sharing out how they solved the problem. There's too often the theory that you've had one answer to a problem, like, no,
Yeah.
there can be
Yeah.
many answers or many ways to answer a problem. And I think, one of the challenges we face is this notion of, the procedures to do math, as an example, versus, how did she solve it and how did this other student solve it? And getting some rich discussion going about why it worked in both of those ways.
That's great. Let me shift gears a little bit. One thing that I think the two of us also see completely eye to eye is the importance of evidence on whether something's working or not. And we talked a little bit about the Philadelphia example for your curriculum. But I think one thing that you do that I really admire is, doing joint research with your users. Can you describe how that works and what the role is and how that's helped?
Yeah, I mean, we do seek opportunities to work with districts to do efficacy studies. We want to know what they're interested in learning about what's working, what's not. And we want that direct feedback for, when things aren't working, how can we improve it? So it goes back into our product development. I mean, we've worked with countless districts. You can read all the evidence reports on our
Yep.
website.
And we'll link to them, yes.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. I mean, one of our products, our Edgenuity courseware product, which is for student self-directed learning and virtual schools, can be used for credit recovery, unit recovery. And I'm amazed at the different ways the districts have implemented it. So we always start with what problem are they trying to solve with any of our solutions? What is their hypothesis? And how can we support them as they look at that research? So we jointly engage around research topics that are important to us and important to districts.
No, that's great. And how do the model's fantastic. You're working with the district, you're seeing what their results are. If it's not what everyone hoped, you're learning from that and saying, how do we change our approach? And because it's digital, it's much easier and more adaptable, and you're constantly ideally improving. How much is success from district to district or school to school? The factors of the school, that's the challenge is this
Right.
situation may work here, but then do you change your program overall or not?
Yeah. I mean, this is a constant question we ask ourselves, right? Because no two school environments are identical. It's back to the top, the messy.
Right.
People are messy. Districts are a reflection of district leaderships. Buildings are a reflection. You can walk into a building and you know right away if there's a strong leader in place and what that leader believes in versus if there's not, right? It is a matter of, can we help move the needle in as many situations as possible? I can't say that we've ever walked away from an opportunity because we thought the chances of success were not good. But I would love to be able to say that, right?
Yeah.
This is probably not the right program for you because it will require your teachers to change tremendously. I don't think we've ever said that. Most businesses haven't, but it
Right.
is probably a reality.
Yeah. I want to go back to the teacher role conversation. With Edgenuity, your point is there's a self-directed learning. There are other examples where they're purely self-directed, where the student's on their own and they're learning. And there's more and more models now where the student is learning the core content through self-directed or on their own. And then it really does change the teacher role. And, the flipped classroom is not a new concept. It was around 30 years ago where the teacher is sort of going through problems, explaining, but I'm seeing even more radical things where the teacher's less about learning and more about motivation and things. How do you see all that happening? And are you seeing that in your programs or in the schools you serve?
We do. And I actually think that I'll bring AI into this because I
Good.
think there are things that AI can do for teachers to take some of the burden away, some of the very time consuming work that teachers do. One example, and we've done this in our edX product, is that we do the first round grading of short writing. That was the first AI
Yeah.
application we put in. And teachers have given us great feedback to it. Now, that short writing review is for the teacher, not for the student. I
Right.
will make that very, very clear.
Right.
We want the teacher in control. We want the teacher to say either A, that's what I would have said, push the button and say go. B, I don't like any of that. I'm going to rewrite it. Or C, I know this kid and I've seen her writing before and I want to make this particular point about this particular assignment. And we've seen all three. All three. As humans, we always take the easy path. So more of them are saying, oh, I like what the computer wrote than anything.
Right.
But I think if we can take some of the burden of time and give teachers more time to create those meaningful relationships, really know the students, ensure that they're inspiring them and motivating them, that's a win. That's a real win.
Yeah, I mean, you gave an example. There's a myriad of examples within AI already. We're seeing it in a lot of schools using it for classroom management things and so forth. So a lot of tasks that were fairly time consuming for teachers gets freed up. And so the idea is just to give, I mean, is it really then it's allows them, you say, to get closer to their students, better understand their students. Is it really to drive more individualized instruction?
That could be one outcome.
Yep.
And we have solicited from teachers what they think the most valuable things that they do and the things that, they would love to have the computer do for them. Letters to families, letters to
Yep.
parents. It's natural language, so it's perfect for a GPT kind of application. And so, we're drafting those things where, again, we draft them, we take the data in from the student performance, populate it, write the summaries, as we all do with AI now.
Yep. Yep.
Teacher can choose to send it mass or individually. It's great. But yes, if you think about the number one thing that teachers do, we all remember that one teacher that really resonated with us and first turned us on to learning. Those of us who spent a lifetime in careers like this, who had somebody who really lit a fire for us. It wasn't because of what she taught us. We can't even remember what she taught us. It was about her.
Yeah.
And it was about the relationship.
Who was your teacher?
I had a great teacher in third grade, and she was very musically inclined. She put a lot of stuff to music, and Miss Bradley was phenomenal. And I was in a new school, and she welcomed me with open arms and played her guitar, and I was
That's
hooked.
awesome.
I was
Yeah.
hooked.
Yeah. Tom Cataldo was my first and second grade teacher, and it was a diverse school, and he just was phenomenal, was inspiring. He taught us all how to play chess in first grade, and we'd go in early to build a kiln, like things probably you can't do in schools today, but we did it back then. So back to AI, because I'm glad we started to get into it. So you're clearly building some tools to help scaffold and support teachers, which is great. You also pointed out earlier this importance of, now that AI is available, what you need to be able to do is different for a learner, for a student, or for navigating society in general. Just like before we had GPS, you had to read a map and know directions, and you can get by with much more directionally challenged. Maybe that's a terrible analogy, but anyway, have you started to think in your curriculum about some of those skills, and how are you thinking about building it into the Imagine Learning
We
portfolio?
have, and we're not actually working on that with AI yet, but we are thinking about how we make visible those durable skills and the durable skills acquisition. It's a progression. It's a learning progression like any other learning progression. We partnered with an organization, Battelle for Kids, that has now been acquired into AASA, that has Portrait of a Graduate. But this concept, Portrait of a Graduate, Portrait of a Learner, learning profiles that we see in about 22 states now, has really taken hold. Asking in a community-based way, asking your community what you want kids who are graduates of our high schools to be able to do and know.
And again, those are things like problem solving, communication,
Yeah, but also self-regulation and resilience, grit. Some people call it grit,
Yeah.
So we are kind of looking at that movement. These are difficult things to implement. They're kind of amorphous ideas to implement. And what we see is the districts and states who have implemented them, there's real lack of fidelity across the states or districts that have done it because there's nothing to tie it to.
Yep.
So we think that tying it into curriculum could be a real lever. And so I've been writing about that and talking. We've been doing some research jointly with Battelle for Kids around that as to what would move the needle for districts or states that are trying to implement in a curriculum product.
It's already making some progress. Even, the posters and the 6 things about these durable skills, like even just naming them and making the teachers and the students aware that these are important things for success, like that's a good step in its own. Obviously, you want them to then say, okay, how do I improve on these things? How do I learn about myself so I know, the type of learner I am, so forth. So I think you're already making progress. From our standpoint at college, we're very hard to assess those things.
Correct.
And we're obviously, with many others, trying to figure out that part of it. But I think it's already a win, just the 22 states that are already using these, that they're up on the walls, that they're talking about it, it's in a conversation, that this generation of students are going to be more aware of these than past generations. So we've talked a lot about Imagine Learning. As I mentioned in the opening, you've had a really successful career. Before Imagine, Kaplan, McGraw-Hill, Houghton Mifflin, Everyday Learning, you've had a lot. And, the goal of this whole podcast is to sort of surface things that really work. Again, the challenge being so many things in education, and you pointed this out earlier, work because of an individual or because of a certain circumstance, but are almost impossible to scale or replicate. And so looking back earlier in your career, what would be 1 or 2 things you'd say, hey, super proud of a program that, had an impact, that had research data to support success?
I look back at my time at McGraw-Hill. It was a time of big growth for me. I was in one part of the organization. They asked me to come and lead a different part of the organization. And this group was, I would say, particularly downtrodden. There was another part of the organization that was given the funding and was really riding high at the time. And it was almost like a turnaround inside the company.
Yeah. What'd you do to get that? Just
I
kidding.
always, yeah. I mean, these are the things that turn me on, the turnaround and fast growth kind of situations. And I've got to say, we set to work on a new reading program. And there were high expectations for it. So this is, kind of I didn't know what I was getting myself into in a way. There were really high expectations on a new reading program. And I had to go to management, Terry McGraw, and the CFO and said, we're not ready. We're not going to be able to launch. We are not getting the right feedback. I don't feel right about this. We're going to need another year. Here this gives, kind of them and says, no, we can't do it.
It was probably Bob Bahash was there at the time.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah,
exactly.
I wouldn't want to be in your shoes.
Yeah. So, I said to them, look, there's no way we can be ready and have a successful program. So let me finish this in the right way. And they did. And I will tell you that the company still, how many years later? 20 years later, is still reaping benefits from that decision.
Wow.
Because the basis of the reading program that we then launched that became number one in the market has had a run of 20 years. But it took courage. This is the challenge, right? Is when as a leader, do you feel like you can step out and say, this is a bad decision. This is a wrong decision. I've got to change tack. I'm looking at what's happening in the market. I'm not getting the right signals about this product. I haven't always done that. There's one other time I should have done it and didn't do it.
Yeah.
But, you got to have courage.
No, that's great. And you clearly must have credibility because those figures were not easy to, push a program back a year. I'm sure there were financial projections and so forth. So it shows how you were seen and your credibility. All right. So I'm going to ask each guest a set of rapid fire questions to get to know you a little better. So we're testing these out here.
Great.
Okay. So there's just 4. It's going to be quick. Don't overthink these. So first is, what's one education buzzword you wish we could retire?
Ed tech.
Yes.
Ed tech. It's too much about the tech and not enough about the ed.
Yeah, and it's so broad. It's a good one. Your favorite book about education or one that deeply shaped your thinking? It doesn't even have to be an education book, but something that, that helped you gain a perspective on education.
I'd have to say Disrupting Class by Clayton Christensen and Michael B. Horn.
I really love that you mentioned Disrupting Class by Clay Christensen. I bet a lot of listeners are well aware of that book, maybe also say it's one of their favorites. Clay's original claim to fame, and probably his most known book, is Innovator's Dilemma, which described how even well-run, successful companies fail to adapt to disruptive innovation. What probably our listeners don't realize is 20 years ago when we were at McGraw-Hill, they had an educational publishing division, and they published Clay's book, Disrupting Class, which was how do you apply Innovator's Dilemma to education. I was relatively new to McGraw-Hill. I had been part of a startup that they acquired and frankly was still a bit of a shit stirrer. And Clay came, we invited Clay to speak to the top 30 or what have you, people at McGraw-Hill Education, right as the book was being published. And we wanted to learn, why is it so hard for leading education companies to adapt to the internet, to digital learning, et cetera, et cetera. And so toward the end, I think you'll remember, I raised my hand and I asked Clay what % he gave us, McGraw-Hill, of successfully adapting and succeeding. And when he replied 0, I can still see some of the scowls I got from my colleagues. So great book, uncomfortable memory. All right. Name one thing that makes you bullish for future learners. And we've talked about a bunch, but what's one thing that makes you sort of optimistic about the future?
I like this portrait of a learner, portrait of a graduate idea. I think it's where we need to be going.
And last, one class that you wish all high school students had to take.
Study skills. No. Does that sound horribly boring?
That does sound bad.
It sounds horribly boring, but
all my younger
AI,
listeners are going
AI literacy might be the one right now because, boy, we really need a lot of work to do to understand what kids need to know about AI. It's a big one now.
Yeah, and we're all still figuring it out. So I want to end where we started, improving educational outcomes. I really thought the Forbes piece in response to the NAEP results that you wrote was great. So let's imagine you and I are talking, 3-5 years from now, reflecting on a positive change. What would you be most proud of or encouraged by in this kind of future scenario?
So how I'd like it to change? Or
Yeah. Let's be optimistic here. I mean, you've been generally optimistic. I feel like I'm the pessimist on this discussion.
All right.
Today.
So here's what I would say. I think coming out of the pandemic, it's kind of, there's a downside and upside to everything. Parents are engaged. Now, we all know that different parents are engaged in different ways, but I am hopeful that parents will be engaged for good. There's a great new book out right now called The Disengaged Teen. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it, by Rebecca Winthrop and Jenny Anderson, talking about what every one of us can do as a parent to improve their students' learning, because everyone can. I'm hopeful that school choice drives real innovation, that there are positive experiments. We're not just, doing the same old, same old. I am hopeful that AI enables us to free up teachers to focus on meaningful relationships with learners, and that then they can be more creative. I think we think about AI as an efficiency play primarily, and I think we got to get beyond that into broader, uses of AI to bring out the creativity in teachers. I want them to feel more successful and fulfilled, which I hope will decrease teacher turnover. They'll stay in the profession longer, because the longer they stay in the profession, generally, the better it is for kids. And I hope that AI enables us to get beyond what I still consider NCLB style assessments. We are still, because of the costs of grading assessments, we've still boiled it down to a lot of stuff that isn't really meaningful to what a kid's life, what they'll need to be able to do throughout their lives, so that we have ways to evaluate student growth in durable skills.
That is great. That is a great list of aspirations that I hope we are discussing.
It's not going to happen in 3 years, but we can
We'll
get
see.
started,
We'll
right?
see. Let's think big. So thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate your time, and good luck to all your ventures.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thanks for tuning in today. Join the conversation by following The Education Equation wherever you listen to podcasts.